Hey guys, in this video I want to show you a couple of clips from my interviews with Ernie Bailey and Steve Fisk, where they discuss Nirvana's Broken Gear. Steve Fisk produced a couple of Nirvana tracks and he discusses what it was like recording those songs while Nirvana was using damaged gear. And Ernie Bailey, one of Nirvana's guitar techs, discusses Kurt Cobain's habit of smashing guitars. In terms of guitar repairs, Kurt Cobain was notorious for smashing his guitars. Was there ever any incident where he smashed his guitar to the point where it was like unfixable?
Oh, constantly. And, that was the thing where, I sort of had a limit where I didn't want to spend more than $200 on a guitar for him back then. I used to find a lot of his guitars for him. And, you know that they're going to get trashed, but you also like to find deals, and there's lots of great deals out there. And, so we would hit the pawn shops, and it was kind of like, well, if I can bring back 5 guitars for under $1,000, that's great. And so, I think if something was damaged to the point to where, well, they're going to have to pay you 3 days' work to fix it, it makes no sense, so.
Did you ever tell Kurt to take it easy with the guitar smashing, or you just let him do his thing?
Oh, no, I loved it. It was so much fun to watch, because when you spend your life restoring them and fixing them, it's just such the exact opposite of your mindset and your process. So to experience that and to see it, but it's also in a, it wasn't like he took a guitar out of the case and just smashed it, whatever. It was an art form. So like when he did this in concert or live, often it was a protracted event that took place over 15 minutes, and you actually heard this thing being dismantled fret by fret, and you'd hear this thing scream, and it was something that you normally don't hear. And so it was one of the parts of the show that I think that I enjoyed the most, especially when it was done well.
Well, one thing I've always found interesting about the guitar smashing habit is that, in particular during the Bleach tour, when Everman was in the band and they were touring in the States and they had like the small little van they were driving across everywhere. And I've read in so many different bios that even at that point, he would keep smashing his guitars anyways, even though they didn't have the gear. That just always stuck in my mind, because it's like you don't have the money to buy new guitars.
Well, one thing that I remember when I got in there and started working is that Kurt would show me some of these relics of things that he used to fix himself. And it sort of shows his dedication. Like there's almost no way that thing could have played in tune after you put that neck on that guitar, and you see some of these examples. And so, yeah, it was interesting.
What's a guitar tech's worst nightmare? Like if a band is on stage and the strings snap right then and there, what is like Armageddon for you?
We don't have those kind of experiences on the road. I don't know. I think it's once in a while you'll find yourself looking out at a stage and everything you've had your hands on and everything that you're responsible for, and understanding that there's so much that is beyond your control and that anything could go at any point in time. And so it's one of those things that you just think about. But if you've done your job and done it well, that stuff doesn't happen. And I guess it's something where I like to say, road crews typically they'll get credit when something goes wrong, because that's when you're recognized. So if you're good at it, you're invisible, and that's great. And it's really about making the client or the performer have perfect shows and have this experience that people have paid for. They come out and it should be an escape from their jobs and all that they do, to come out and see people do something that appears to be otherworldly.
I guess for starters, just a general question about your relationship with Nirvana. What was the initial impression of them in terms of their professionalism or how they approached recording?
Very serious. They understood that this was an opportunity. No attitude, nothing. They just said, how do we do this? Where do we set up?
So in terms of the recording, I've read, correct me if I'm mistaken, that there were some technical issues working with Nirvana in the studio. Is this correct?
Well, all of the blues style stage destruction they would do at the end of the set. The guitar and the guitar amp were fine, but the drums were pretty messed up, and the bass was as well, and the bass amplifier. So I think one pickup was working on the bass, one speaker was working on the amp. Do you know about Chad's drum kit?
Yeah, it was like way too big for him, right?
Well, that being said, but you know what? It was made out of fiberglass. It was a very specific kind of drum set that was made popular by Billy Cobham and various jazz fusion drummers, and it was made of plexiglass. And, you know, so no wood, no nothing, just black plexiglass. So it had a sound kind of like 5-gallon plastic buckets or something like that. It's worth noting that Chris's bass and Chad's drum set are like 80s garbage, you know, instruments that no one cared about anymore, and that's how they got to Aberdeen. Although, actually, I think the drum set might have been from Yakima. You might have got that in Yakima. But even that big drum set, that was a North Drum Kit Junior. So the actual North Kit is bigger. Yeah.
So considering they had, at the time, I guess, subpar equipment, how did you approach recording the gear? Did you have to do anything unique that you wouldn't typically do?
Well, actually, I love the way the North Drum Kit sounded. That's the drum kit on Bleach. And in particular, I love the tom-toms because it's just one thing that's a little bigger, so there's no character variation. It's exactly the same sound, just a little lower and a little lower and a little lower. So I didn't do anything special with that, except that Indino told me that he mic'd them from the inside, which is a unique thing you can do with drums like that, because that way you don't get any hi-hat or cymbals or any bleed, but because it was made of plexiglass. And also, you've seen pictures of them. I mean, it looks like a ship's, you know, exhaust pipe. I mean, they bent forward, right? Maybe you haven't seen that. The tom-tom's a very unusual construction. And you can get right up inside, and apparently they sound the same from the inside as they do from on top.
Really?
So I jammed the microphones up inside, and then he never hit them. Which, over 5 songs, he barely hit them, and it pissed me off, because that was my favorite thing about that drum kit.
So you mentioned that the guitar amp you guys used was okay. Do you remember which type of amp it was?
I think it was the same amp that Gary Lee Conner was playing through at the time, which was a small solid-state PV with a 12-inch speaker. And just a shitty way to make a good sound, you know. But it sounded fine. But yeah, traditionally people would use tube amplifiers and, you know, Fender twin reverbs or Marshalls or things like that. So using a solid-state PV is pretty grotesque. There's only so many ways to record somebody at the music source. We'd have some isolation rooms, and I set up, you know, Kurt in one room and Chris in another room, and then I explain we keep the doors halfway open so everything bleeds in and you get a little bit of sound that way.
In terms of your relationship with the band, how did you guys first meet?
Because of all of my friends in Olympia and all of their friends in Olympia, we had lots of mutual friends, and they did play a show in Ellensburg. They were friends with the Screaming Trees, so that's how they ended up in Ellensburg, you know, playing. I didn't meet Nirvana then, but we kind of said hi to Chris, and yeah, I don't think I talked to him until I recorded them.
So you recorded 5 songs. 2 of them, Stain and Been a Sun, got on to the Blue EP, and then the other songs, Token Easter Song, Polly, and Even in His Youth, they were released later on. Do you know why those 3 songs were shelved for a little bit?
They were never finished. The other 2 were finished. The other 2 were mixed. Where the other 3 were just, you know, things that we never got around to. I think we were going to finish them, but that never happened. And so later on, Jack mixed those tracks. I think the big thing you can hear is on Been a Sun and Stain, there's one guitar overdubbed to make the guitar a little bigger, and the vocals were overdubbed. Where the other 3 songs you mentioned, those are all live scratch vocals. I mean, Kurt's scratch vocals were very good. And I recorded them very well. But I wasn't intending on using them as the finished vocals.